Again, thank you so much. Wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you so much to Mr. Sigit Pramono for delivering a very fruitful and very motivating opening address. And the next agenda is our main event. So for all of you guys here, we have around 70 participants. You can be ready with your notes, with your pen, because we will start our main agenda. So our main agenda is discussion on corporate and Sharia governance of Islamic financial institution that will be led by our moderator. Please give a warm welcome to our moderator, Mr. Adril Hakim. The stage is yours.
Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Is my voice clear enough?
It's clear, sir.
Okay. Thank you. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alamin. Nahmaduhu wa nasta'inu wa nastaghfiruh wa na'udzu billahi min shururi anfusina wa min sayyiati a'malina. May yahdihillahu fala mudilla lahu wa may yudlil fala hadiya lahu. Asyhadu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la syarika lahu wa asyhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluhu la nabiyya ba'd. Okay, welcome all participants, brothers and sisters. Academia of SEBI School of Economics. Welcome to our evening session about international lectures with our guest speakers from UK. Brother Muhammad Farooq Raza. Welcome to our occasion, Mr. Farooq. Should I call you Mr. Farooq? Or Brother Farooq? It's okay.
Yeah, whatever, Papa.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, Brother Farooq is a practitioner, senior consultant in the field of governance, especially corporate governance and also Syariah governance in Islamic financial institutions. Okay. Today we have two agenda. The first one is the talk by Brother Farooq. It's about 45 minutes, and then the next session is the Q&A session. We'll have about maybe 30 minutes after the talk. Maybe without further introductions, we let Brother Farooq to deliver the talk. Go ahead, please. The mic is yours, Brother Farooq.
Thank you. Terima kasih, Pak Adril. Terima kasih, Pak Jajang, Pak Sigit. Ya, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam
Bapak.
warahmatullahi
Nama saya
wabarakatuh.
Farooq Raza. Nama saya Farooq Raza. Saya adalah Direktur Utama IFAS dan Ketua IOF Dewan Sharia Governance. So yeah, I'll switch to English, I believe. I don't want to make a comedy with my Basa, but yeah, it's a pleasure for me. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. It's a pleasure for me, to be with you today, and thank you very much, for giving me the opportunity to share my humble knowledge and experience with the school and everyone involved. So, inshallah, today, we will try to look at a very important aspect of Islamic finance. And that's the corporate and Sharia governance in the financial institutions that are offering Islamic or Sharia finance services. So before I move to Sharia governance, which is probably the main topic, I think we need to define and we need to look at the issue of corporate governance. So what is corporate governance and where does it come from, and what role does it play in the function and good governance of or a good stable function of financial institution. So there are different definitions that have been given, to corporate governance, but the easiest one is actually that how corporation or any business is actually being run and for what purpose. So every business has a purpose, what that purpose is and how the business is being run actually to achieve that purpose. So this is in short, probably, the shortest definition and the easiest definition of corporate governance. It also defines a corporation's, power structure. So who has the power, which power, how does it work? What's the hierarchy of the power? The accountability structure, and also the decision-making process. So any organization, any corporation will have a hierarchy, will have, an accountability structure, who is responsible for what, and how they make their decision. So, is the decision actually made, on the basis of, just one person, or is it actually a collective decision-making? Is it actually driven by the purpose of the corporation in an Islamic, financial or Sharia institution? Is it actually being, assessed in, compliance with the Sharia requirements? So all this will be part of, the corporate governance. So in a sense, corporate governance is a set of organizational arrangements. So whatever, the organization has arranged between, different parts of the organization to enable the management and the board of the corporation to run the business in efficiently and effectively by aligning as much as possible the actions of the management of the corporation with the interests of its stakeholders. So this is probably the longer definition, I would say. So on one hand, we have, the organizational arrangements, how things will work within the organization that will enable the management and the board of, the corporate structure of, the organization, how it will help them work more efficiently and more effectively. And this will happen when they align the actions of the management and, the interests of all the stakeholders in one line. Now, this is very important to have, everything clearly defined and everything clearly, structured as well. Now, this is a concept, corporate governance that did not happen overnight. This has actually evolved over, a long number of years, actually on decades, if not, I wouldn't call it maybe hundreds of years, but definitely over many decades in the, in the recent history. And why did it happen? Why it became actually, important to, have a corporate governance structure in any corporation, in any institution, because with the evolution of time, with the evolution of, the corporations, the effect or the impact that a corporation can have actually on the society, on the economy, on, its employees, on, its customers, on the environment these days, all of this actually is becoming bigger and bigger. That impact can be actually so powerful sometimes that it can cause, issues, very serious issues to the stakeholders if, the structure is not in place. And if there is a good structure in place, then we can imagine that, it will help the business function in a more stable way. It will create a good value. It will create a good impact for everyone. And it will be beneficial for the society, which is in line with the Sharia requirements. Now, the organizational arrangements that I mentioned earlier, they include, the governance organs like the board of directors, for example, and it's different committees. So, for example, a typical board of directors will have an audit committee, will have a remuneration committee, will have a, a compliance committee, and so on and so forth. So, it has different committees. Then also within the organization and within the management, there will be compliance and audit functions as well. So compliance is something that is continuously assessing that the corporation is, functioning in accordance with the required laws, with the required regulations, all applicable regulations. It is actually fulfilling all, the administrative requirements, any policies in place, and so on. And then audit is a function that comes after the business has taken place. So, for example, in a bank, it will be after the transaction has happened. So they will come and they will, the auditors, they will audit to make sure that everything is in order, everything is functioning properly, and there are no loopholes or no loose ends, within the corporation that may cause issues, later. Then also the policies and procedures, how things will be done, different types of things. For example, how the people will be recruited, in a bank, for example, how the customers will be treated, what will be the KYC policies, what will be the anti-money laundering policies, what procedures will be used, for credit risk assessment, for example, and so on and so forth. And there is, of course, internal control as well to make sure that everything is, functioning in a proper way. So these are a few of the arrangements, but of course, it's a very long list of things that we can continue, talking about. Now here, I mentioned a couple of times, the word stakeholders. Now here I want to highlight two important theories. So I think about like 30 years ago, there was, this gentleman called Milton Friedman, a researcher, who came up with a shareholders theory. Anybody knows, in the audience anything about shareholders theory? What does it say? Okay, so let me tell you, shareholders theory means that any corporation or a business is actually meant to be serving its shareholders. So people who hold equity in that business, in that corporation, are the only people that the business shall care about. So for example, if let's take the example of Apple. So Apple shall worry about only its shareholders, the people who have invested money in Apple, in corporation. That is what counts for Apple. Anything else is not important. So what happens is that when you follow a shareholders theory, then technically speaking, your one and only interest is actually looking after your shareholder, and the business and the management will always do everything possible to create and to continue increasing the shareholders' value, meaning that the share price will increase. The people who invested, for example, $100,000, will become will have like $500,000. One who invested $1 million will have $5 million, and it keeps on growing all the time. So they look after only their shareholders interests and nothing else. Now on this way, what happens is that because the only worry for them is to increase the shareholders' value and to reward the investor, in that quest, they will just forget everything else. So for them, there will be no ethics, there will be no morals, there will be nothing. So if they're causing harm to the environment, for example, by making new models of iPhone, for example, or bringing a new type of battery, they are sourcing the raw materials from somewhere in Africa, where the mines are actually the mining is done by children, for example. So there is child labor, and just because they want to have cheap access to raw materials, so they will do that because they don't care. They don't think about child labor. They don't think about the environmental damage that they are causing by mining and doing all this and so on. They just care about the shareholders' value, and that's it. Khalas, tamam. There is nothing else important for them. Now, a few years later, another gentleman, another researcher called Edward Freeman, he came up with a stakeholders theory. Now, this is theory which is very different. And Freeman says, actually, any corporation is not about the shareholders only. In this day and age, it's not about, a business cannot be just said that it shall worry about and it shall take care only of its shareholders, because in any business operation there are actually more than the shareholders. So there are people who are having a stake, and he calls them stakeholders, and they have actually a share in that business, either directly or indirectly. And what he means here is that there are, like two different types of, stakeholders. For example, a business can have internal stakeholders and external stakeholders. Within the internal stakeholders, the board members are, a stakeholder because they are carrying the ultimate responsibility of running the business. The management is a stakeholder because they are, responsible for day-to-day operations. Then there are employees who get affected because of the corporation and its activities, its business. So we have to look after, we have to think of the employees as well. And then, of course, the customers. So we have to think of the customers as well. But it's more than that. It's not only the internal stakeholders, but there are external stakeholders. And who are the external stakeholders? That may be the government, for example, because the government is earning fiscal revenue. The government is, interested in employment, for example. So the business is employing people. How very, how well paid they are, how, they are being taken care of. Is there any, oppression, we can say, that's happening with, with the workforce, etc. And, how much the business is paying to, to the government in terms of taxes and so on and so forth. Then there is also, the local communities, for example, where there is a factory, for example, they are producing something, but then they are, exhausting, fumes, for example, which is causing health issues to the local environment, local communities. So they are a stakeholder as well. So we cannot allow a business to just think of the shareholders and do whatever they want, cause harm to the, to the climate, whether it's, in form of, some torrential rains, that causes flood, or, something else, or they pollute, the water in the area just because of, their chemicals, etc. So the local community is also, and then the society at large is also seen as a stakeholder. So we need to take care of all of these stakeholders. And Freeman says that unlike Friedman, who says, I'll take care only of the shareholders, I don't care about anyone else. Freeman says, no, I cannot do that. I have to look after everyone, and I have to strike a balance between all of them. And I have to have a system in place, a mechanism in place that allows me to keep a balance between these things. And I give a due share, to all of these, stakeholders, and I keep them happy, and I make them, satisfied. So these are two different, theories that, we see in, the corporate world. Now here, I have a question for you. In your views, anyone can answer this question. If we assess these two theories in the light of Sharia, what do you think, which of the theories is actually closer to, the aspect of Sharia?
Second one.
Edward Freeman, sir.
Okay, so you think stakeholders.
Yeah.
Terima kasih, Pak Jajang. Why do you think it's stakeholders theory and not the shareholders?
Actually, it was not me, sir, but I have the same opinion. I will choose stakeholders theory because it is very important to put our attention to not just to our internal stakeholder, but also to the external stakeholder. Even we have to put our attention to the customers, to the government. Yeah, I think so far that's all I do. I think it's really important to make it balance between internal stakeholder and also external stakeholder.
Thank you, Pak Jajang. I really appreciate. Absolutely
so
right.
much.
Yeah. So the Sharia view of a business or a corporation is actually very much close to stakeholders theory. Of course, we have to go further and beyond, the stakeholders theory. We have to think about other things as well that the normal stakeholders theory will not look at. I mean, things about halal and haram and, makruh and so on and so forth. But shareholders theory is actually pure capitalism. And that, unfortunately, is causing a lot of harm, to the world, where, the corporations are, just doing anything and everything to, make sure that they keep earning money and more money and more money and make their shareholders richer and richer and richer. And in that journey, if they, destroy everything else in the world, then, they don't care and it's not their problem. This is, unfortunately, we are seeing this every single day. As I'm talking now, we know that there are so many events happening in the world right now that are actually causing harm to the humanity, to the planet, to Allah's, universe that Allah has created, with His mercy for us. And He has given us, the human being, the insan, the right actually to use these resources, but we are depleting, we are destroying those resources because of this approach of capitalism, of shareholders theory, and we are ignoring, the stakeholders theory. So in this, I think I'm just trying to, give you a bigger picture here so that we understand that, where we are going. So it's all about, creating a balance between things and making sure that, we are not causing fasad or, causing fitna in the world. So Allah says again and again in the Quran, that La yuhibbullahu al-mufsidin. Allah does not like, the people who create chaos in the world. And unfortunately, when we have, this approach in life where everything, that is to do is with money, then definitely, we become among those people who are likely, to be actually causing fasad in the world. And that is not really, something that, Allah will like. And may Allah protect us, from being among those people. So a good corporate governance structure will help to build an environment of trust, between different stakeholders. there will be complete transparency and accountability as well. So it's not only there is transparency, but yeah, I'm accountable, I'm responsible. If there is something wrong, then I take responsibility for that and I will fix it. And all this is necessary for fostering long-term investment, financial stability, business integrity. All of these things are very, very important because these things, they will contribute towards, a stronger growth and more inclusive societies. This is, by the way, the definition is given by OECD. This is very important. So this actually is, I think probably the most comprehensive definition that you will see on this page is the last one, where we say trust, transparency, accountability, financial stability, business integrity, growth, and inclusive. So all these qualities have to be created within a business, any business, and of course we will go a step beyond in terms of Sharia as well. So stakeholders, I already I think touched upon this briefly. So there will be, these are, the group of people or the groups who have certain rights or a stake with respect to corporation. So as I said, internal and external. So I already gave you the examples. Corporation, will have shareholders, board of directors, employees, and customers, and so on and so forth. However, so shareholders, remember this is the difference. So the stakeholder theory is still identifying shareholders as one of the stakeholders, but they are not the only stakeholders. So this is the key difference. So they are among the stakeholders, and we definitely need to look after their interest as well. But we need to think of others as well. For example, the suppliers, the creditors, the government, the society, and so on and so forth. Okay. Sorry. I'm just trying to manage the screen. Just bear with me 1 second, please. Okay. So key corporate governance objectives. So what are the objectives of having a corporate governance structure? This is about protecting and balancing the interests of different stakeholders. And again, we are not saying here that everybody will be equal. We are not saying that all stakeholders are equal. We are saying we have to be fair. We have to, first of all, recognize, the stakeholders. We have to give them their right. We have to identify their right, and we have to recognize their right. And then we have to give them the fair share that actually is due to them. Then controlling the management's conflict of interest, supporting effective decision making. So we have to make sure that with this corporate governance mechanism, we are making decisions that are actually in the best interest of all stakeholders. So this is not about only either the shareholder getting the highest value or the management getting the biggest bonuses and so on. So it's not about that. It's about making a decision that is actually aligned with the most of the stakeholders. Then also improving the ability to detect and anticipate service and financial failures. Now, this is very important because any corporation, any business, when it continues, when it is functioning, it will always have this risk of having something going wrong. It could be an operational failure, it can be a system failure, it can be an oversight of someone in the workforce, in the management. So how good we are as a business actually to detect if there is a gap, if there is a problem, we can detect it immediately, because the quicker the business identifies detects the problem, the quicker they can fix it, and that helps them in having more stability, more sustainability, and more growth. Also enhancing transparency, responsibility, and accountability, which is very, very important also from Sharia point of view. Then boosting public trust and civic engagement. And then finally, ensuring the corporation's optimization of resources and sustainability. Well, so this is again very important that we make sure that the business is actually optimizing its resources. There is no wastage, and hence we create this sustainability, which is very, very important from a Sharia point of view. We belong to that religion. We follow that religion, alhamdulillah, the deen of Allah, that does not allow us as Muslims actually to even break a blade of grass, a small piece of grass. We shall not break a leaf of a tree unless we actually need it. We are not even allowed to kill an animal or a bird if we do not need, to eat it, or if it's not, something that can actually harm us. So this is about sustainability of resources. I wonder sometimes, everybody is talking about sustainability these days, and so on and so forth. of resources, etc. But subhanallah, Allah has already given us this blessing that we are, by definition, we are actually in that mindset where we must observe sustainability of resources because we are responsible for them and because, we are accountable for them. So the controls in corporate governance, they can be classified as two sets. So the first set is internal controls, and that will be, for example, the monitoring by the board of directors, by the shareholders, by the major debtors, etc., and so on. Then there will be internal control environment and internal auditors as well. So there will be, for example, if a big investment decision is being made by the business, by the corporation. So then that decision cannot be made, by one person. So that decision must be brought to the board. It must be, substantiated with the, very good evidence of, needs or, assessment of need or, with a study that actually proves that there is evidence, that this is a good decision and so on and so forth. There may be, a need, a policy, for example, having at least 3 different quotations, from different suppliers and so on and so forth. So all this has to be within the internal control environment. And then there is, the audit, system in place as well. The internal auditors, they may come, they may ask, okay, show me the policy. If the policy is updated, show me the documentation whether, this comparison between 3 quotation of 3 different suppliers, was it done or not done? Was it done correctly? How this decision was made. So for example, a contract of $10 million has been given out to, a certain manufacturer or a certain contractor. On what basis it was given? Who approved it? So all these things, they are part of this transparency. They are part of, this control. And that is, one of the integral, components of, corporate governance. And then authorities matrix, which is delegation and hierarchy of authorities. Who is responsible for what and what will be the level of their decision. So, for example, a fund manager, they might be able actually to make an investment decision, but only to a certain level. For example, an investment of maximum $1 million. If it's more than $1 million, then they must seek approval, from an investment committee, which shall be comprising of, at least 3 people. And, there shall be, so on and so forth. So all these things, they are in place. This is internal controls. Then we also have external controls, and that is, of course, starting with government laws and regulations. So these laws and regulations in each country, they vary from one country to another, but they are there with a purpose. And the purpose is actually to make sure that the corporation and the business is functioning in a good way. It's, achieving its purpose, and it's not risking, the interests of its stakeholders. So all this is part of, the external control. So that's why we will have, the laws, the regulations. There will be also, financial reporting requirements. There may be also, external auditors. For example, for, any financial institution, you have a requirement, a regulatory requirement of, having external audit, and so on and so forth. So all these things. Then there will be standard setting bodies as well. So there are so many standard setting bodies in Islamic finance. We have IOFI for, Sharia, for auditing, for accounting, for, governance and ethics. Then, we have IFSB, Islamic Financial Services Board, for, prudential regulations, the risk management, financial stability, and so on and so forth. So all these standard setting bodies are there. You have IFRS, the International Financial reporting standards. So you have Basel, 1, 2, 3, and many other as well. So all these standard setting bodies are there actually to help organizations function in a proper way, where there is a standard system of financial reporting, where there is transparency, where there is internal and external audit, independent audit, to make sure that the business is doing what it is doing, and so on. And then of course, for big businesses, there is also media pressure. So for example, if Garuda, for example, is making a decision, then that decision will be scrutinized by the media, and that will also play a role in sort of control, because the Garuda decision makers, they may think of okay, what will be the the media response to this? Is there a a risk of backlash? Well, how do we manage it, and so on and so forth. So all these things, they are part of the external. Now, the key risk factors behind corporate governance failure. So, of course, despite having all these systems, you will still see a lot of problems in the business world. There will be a lot of failures, big corporations, small corporations. So, there are many factors, behind this. So one of them is management fraud or incompetence, meaning that the management, either they are not competent, of what they are doing. So for example, a chief risk officer, is not actually capable of, managing the risk properly, or, in that specific sector, maybe there is a lack of skill or lack of experience or knowledge and so on, or there may be actually negligence, or there may be even deliberate fraud as well. So this unfortunately happens a lot. Another big problem is ineffectiveness of the board of directors. Now, this is again very common, unfortunately, that many times what happens is that the board of directors will be usually constituted by the major shareholders. And because most of the time it's not the actual shareholder who will be attending the board meeting, or who will be the board nominee. They will actually send someone from the group, or from any organization, any entity, to be sitting on the board. And this person, who is a board member representing a certain entity, it may be the government, it may be public sector, or anyone else, may not have actually the background of that business. They may not be actually interested in that. They are just sent, and they are just sitting there because they have no choice. So when they are not engaged in in the decision making, when they are not engaged in looking at the reporting, understanding the nature of the business, understanding the risk level, then they become ineffective. And when there is an ineffective board, there is a very high risk of corporate governance failure, because then things will go undetected. The probability of having a management that is incompetent, or the risk of fraud, or other moral hazards, they will increase significantly if the board is ineffective. Then also, I already said, insufficient attention paid to risk management is also very important. And a lot of time, the board directors, or the managers, they actually do not understand the risk. One of the key problems in Sharia finance, I gave you example, is everybody talks about why they're doing murabha, why they're not doing musharaka, why they're not doing mudaraba, etc. There are multiple reasons, but one of the key reasons is actually that people do not understand, the risk of musharaka. They do not understand the risk of mudaraba, because that will require a very hands-on knowledge of the underlying business of, the where the money is being invested on musharaka or mudaraba, where the bank is, giving money to the corporate, to the SME. And, if they do not have this, good knowledge, if they do not have, the hands-on approach in understanding the business, knowing, the management, knowing the owners of the business, the risk of them losing money in that mudaraba or musharaka will be very high. And because the Sharia banks, they are not very well versed in this type of risk management, which requires a lot more effective and hands-on and very direct engagement. They try to shy away from it, and they will try to resort to murabaha, because this is just credit risk, and they know how to manage credit risk, and that's it. So we will just do murabaha and tamam. We don't want to do anything else. Then poor communication can also be a reason of governance failure. Excessive complexity. So again, some of the big corporations, they have this tendency of having very complex type of structures where, the decisions are very difficult. It's very difficult to identify who is responsible for what. And, in case of, any gaps or any things, it becomes very difficult actually to make someone accountable. So that is another, big reason for corporate governance failure. Then ignorance showed towards red flags raised by internal and external audit. Now, this is very important, because the purpose of audit is actually that always audit will come, always after any transaction, that's happening. So if there is a transaction that has been detected, that has been identified by internal or external, auditors, that has been picked up, and for example, there is a repeat, problem that is coming. And that is actually pointing towards either the lack of training, for example, in the staff, or it could be a system glitch that is causing issues. So if that is not fixed, and it's ignored, that is something that can actually balloon. It will create a big bubble, and then this bubble will burst, and it will cause a lot of damage to the business and the stakeholders as well. Then we have, information glass ceiling, meaning that, the information actually will not rise above a certain level. So usually this is a very common problem that, the people who are sitting in senior management, they will not actually have access to the real information of the business. They are sitting, in their big, glass towers, and they are just looking at the data provided, by the junior management or by middle management, but they actually don't know, what's happening in the branches, for example, what's happening in their store, what's happening in the project. So again, when it goes even, higher, for example, to the board, people will be even more disconnected. So they will not have, the right information. And as a result, they will actually ignore the realities of the business. And then also, sometimes the businesses, they try to influence, the external auditors to express an opinion which is inconsistent with reality. I give you an example. In 2008, the big financial meltdown starting from the US due to, the subprime mortgages, if you remember. That was actually, I think, a combination of all these things, that you see on the screen right now. So it was not actually because, of something else. It was purely because there was, an element of incompetence. There was an element of fraud. There was, insufficient attention paid to risk management. There was, very much complexity of the products that they were doing. And then, there was actually a lot of collusion, where, people were influenced, like, the external auditors, the rating agencies, they were all influenced, the legal firms, law firms, they were influenced. Okay, you know what, this is an opportunity here. And all this is actually connected. This is all going back to shareholder theory. Whenever they are trying to make money, and only, interest for them is making money. So now what they are trying to do is actually get the money in, without, with regards to anything. So they influence the auditors, they influence, the rating agencies. They got wrong reports, they got, erroneous and, reports, financial reporting that was actually not a true reflection of, the reality of the business. And as a result, then everything went out of control. And from a certain point onwards, it just became, a shambles for everyone, and where a lot of people, they suffered in the world for a long time. I think it was almost, for like 6, 7 years, 8 years, actually, that the problem continued. And, the whole world paid the price for, directly or indirectly because of, a handful of people in the US who actually just wanted to make a lot of money in a very short space of time. And they ignored all of these corporate governance, and, the transparency and accountability, it was out of the window. And, then we ended up actually with the, with this issue. So when it comes to financial institutions, it's actually a very unique case of corporate governance. And why is that? Because these are the institutions that are actually, handling people's money. So it's, the ordinary persons, the general public's savings that they are, so we work hard, we earn our salary. By the end of the month, when we get some money, we try to save something. So we have put our savings, in a financial institution, whether it's, a bank, whether it's, a BMT, for example, or, a cooperative or whatever. So, these people, they are actually holding to our money, public money. So that's why, this is a unique character of financial institution. And that is why they will have, a need of a much bigger I think, adherence to good governance than, others, types of corporations who are actually not directly handling public money. So there is also this wider definition of stakeholders because, as I said, it's public money. So huge amount of people can be affected, in a single financial institution. This can be actually in millions. Then also, any meltdown of, a financial institution, that can have a very serious impact on the economic growth and livelihood of, the people. And it can also create a systemic risk. So it's not only that one bank is God forbid, if it goes down, it may actually drag other banks down as well with it. And, it becomes a systemic risk, meaning that, multiple institutions, they will become victim of that. And then, that will create a very, very big problem, as, in 2008, it happened. So many banks, they actually failed overnight or, within a space of a week or so. And then, people were in problem, for years and years because their deposits, either they were lost or, they were stuck, forever. And, it's just, public suffering. That's why in order to protect these, public funds, there are a lot of regulations that have been put in place. And, the transparency and information symmetry is required, because there's a lot of information asymmetry in financial institutions, because, the reporting may not be correct, the accounting may not be correct. When it comes to Islamic financial, the Sharia financial institutions, it's even more challenging because of the nature of the product. For example, if the deposit is taken on wakala, or if the deposit is taken on mudaraba, which are the two most common structures that are being used actually for liability products. Now, in both cases, there is an element of information asymmetry. For example, how much profit was actually generated by the investment. Then there are different pools. The pools have different weightages. Then there's actually a very complex system of calculation of the profit and then distribution according to different ratios that the bank may have with different groups of customers, or different arrangements and so on. So how do we make sure actually that everything is done properly, and is the system actually capable of calculating this? Is there enough clarity available? So is the Sharia board actually looking into this? Is the regulator OJK looking into this? Is this something that the Sharia board is looking into it? Is this something is there any guidance provided by Diwan Sharia National, DSN about the allocation and the distribution of profits on the deposits? So there is actually a lot of things that we need to consider, and a lot of transparency and system is required. A robust system is required actually to make sure, because of this uniqueness. Okay, at this point in time, before I move on to the next, section of the lecture, I may give a couple of minutes for any questions or any comments so far.
Yes, sir. I have the questions.
Sure.
Yeah. So you told us about the K-race corporate governance failure, and one of it is fraud and also incompetence. If we talk about Islamic financial institutions, the institutions will require more to the workers. That is the knowledge about fiqh muamalah, for example. The workers should know about mudarabah, musharakah, and so on and so on. And then if they know it, if they know how it works, so it's going to be competence. But otherwise, they will be incompetence. And then usually to avoid the adverse selections and also the moral hazard in institutions, we know the institution will require a ZV or maybe interview something like that. So my questions is about what is actually you are doing in your institutions. There is IFIAS to avoid this problem, to address this problem.
Thank you, Pajajang. Yeah, it's a very good question, actually. So what we do is, we always refer, our first point of call is actually, IOFI governance standards. So I also happen to be, I just told you that I'm, the chair of IOFI's governance and ethics board. So we try to, address all these issues, the moral hazard, the probability of, the wrong decision making, and so on and so forth. We try to capture all this and manage all these issues in form of standards, and in form of code of ethics, for example, through IOFI. And at IFAS, what we try to do is always our first point of call is IOFI standards, whether it's Sharia standards or accounting and auditing, or governance. So we try to implement. So wherever we have a project, we try to implement IOFI standards or IFSB standards as applicable. And if they, obviously, this is a very big field, Islamic finance, and despite very hard work being put in IFSB and IOFI both, still there are a number of things that are still not addressed. So we then try to tackle this with the help of the Sharia scholars that we have with us. In the relevant Sharia board, to make sure that we get some guidance from them. And then we also look at, some, conventional, frameworks as well, to see if there is anything that we can take from them, which is not contradictory to Sharia. As the Hadith says, the Prophet ﷺ, he said that, any, thing of wisdom is actually, the lost property of a Muslim, of a Mu'min. So we shall take it, from wherever we get. So if there is anything that we can find in the conventional frameworks, so first thing is, it's, whether it's available in, in Islamic frameworks or not, Sharia frameworks. If it's not, then anything available, in, conventional framework. And if there is anything available in conventional framework, then we have to do an assessment that whether it's contradicting with Sharia or not. If it's not contradicting, then alhamdulillah, we can use that. If it's contradicting, then we have to find a solution. And for that, we have to seek guidance from, the ulama, to make sure that, we don't make a mistake. And then, usually we bring that, and we always encourage the industry, players, including, the academics as well, to bring the issues to IOFI and IFSB, so that, we can try to prioritize those problems, that are causing, concern to the industry. And we try to bring standards, in effective, management of, those issues. So this is how we are trying to handle this. Does that
Thank you,
answer
sir.
your question?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay.
I have a question from the one participant, sir.
Yes, no problem.
Okay, he asked me that in the advancement of the technology, for example, artificial intelligence, have you heard about the application of artificial intelligence in support to the what is that, to establish the corporate governance in your experience?
Establish, sorry, what?
The corporate governance in general.
Yeah, well, okay.
Have they taken benefits from the advancement of technology, like artificial intelligence,
No,
to establish the corporate governance?
Absolutely, Padril. So there are actually, today's systems are very strong, and they actually do address, a lot of these things that we are talking about. So the systems will, help the organization, especially the Sharia financial institutions, actually to put things in place in the right way, where you need a policy, you need a procedure, there is a workflow, there is a an FAQ, frequently answered questions, all this documentation is there. There are, logs that actually help you in understanding things as you go along, in the system. You process something, for example, any, transaction is being processed, you are developing a new product and so on. So the system will be able actually to capture a lot of these things. But let me tell you, Padril, that, this is something, corporate governance is something that is to do with humans. To be honest with you, me personally, as an individual, and I may be wrong, I don't believe actually that, we will be able to harness, this beast, or, we will be able actually to capture this beast, or capture this animal with technology only. Yes, technology can help you with anti-money laundering. It can help you with know your customer. It can help you with other things, with reporting and regulations and so on and so forth. But still, the elements of fraud, the elements of transparency, the elements of accountability. Yani this is this is your personal integrity. When people accept an appointment on a board, for example, then they need to be aware that what is required of them. So this is not a position of privilege only. Every privilege comes with a responsibility. So they need, when they accept the privilege, then they must accept also the responsibility, and they need to understand that responsibility. So one of the issues that I have come across multiple times in my 20 years of career in Sharia finance is that, especially in Islamic windows, right? Because Islamic window is is an institution within the institution, so a bank within a bank, right? So they will have their Sharia board, but they will not have a board of directors of their own, right? So the board of directors is actually, the mother company, the mother bank will have their board of directors. Now, these board of directors, these members of the board of directors, they will be usually conventional bankers with either no knowledge or very little knowledge of Sharia, right? Now, this is actually a very common problem that is, causing a lot of issues on a daily basis, in the industry, because they are not fully aware of their responsibility. So they don't understand the implications of Sharia. They do not understand the importance of the calculation of the profit according to, because this is all about ownership, right? So Islam recognizes the right, the haqq right? So when I have deposited my money, I'm in musharaka with Adril, my share is 30%, then I shall get 30% of, the profit. I shall, we cannot say, okay, here is 50-50 for both of you. No, if we have agreed on 50-50, then okay, no problem. But if we agreed on 30-70, then I have right only to 30, and nobody shall be able actually to give me less than 30, and I shall not expect more than 30 as well. Now, if the board of directors is not aware of this, right? And, if, for example, 1 month, just for argument's sake, if 1 month the profit, generated by the pool of investment is lower than the expectation, right? And then, the board of directors, they may say, all right, you know what, just, give them the normal profit. Even if we have made less, it's okay, no problem. Now, it may be Sharia compliant. I'm not saying that it's not Sharia compliant what they are doing, because they might be gifting it from their side, right? But the board of directors needs to know that they have a responsibility. They have a fiduciary responsibility towards the depositors. They have a fiduciary responsibility towards the shareholders. So they cannot just make this decision, out of nowhere. Okay, let's top up the profit and let's distribute. It's okay, no problem, Yani. Or if we are short of our target, for example, of X% of profitability, we are in the month of December. Okay, let's pay less profit this month, then we will make it up next month, so that we can achieve our target. We cannot do that. Yani, this is not possible in Sharia. You see my problem? So this will actually come from when people are aware of their responsibility. They know that, they are sitting on the board of directors. They are carrying the responsibility, the ultimate responsibility of making sure that their system is capable, their, the workforce is actually, fully trained. They understand what they are doing. And they are discharging their duties correctly. So this will come from integrity. This you cannot control this, by technology. So there are certain aspects, and there are others, that we cannot. Sorry, I went into too much detail.
Yeah, in essence, that the bad people should be faced by the good people, actually, not by tools. Yeah, because human beings always overcome tools.
Exactly.
Yeah. Controlling tools. Actually.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So now
Islam.
let's look into the corporate governance in Islam. So what does it mean actually?
Go ahead.
So first thing that I would like to highlight here is the concept of the stewardship in Islam, meaning that Allah is the Almighty, the Creator, the Provider, the Sustainer, the Lord of all dominions. Everything that we know and everything that we don't know of is all Allah's creation. It's Allah's ownership. And everything belongs to Allah, including us, right? This is our iman. Now, what we say is that Allah has given us, the human being, He has made us His agent, His naib, His, what we call steward on the earth. And He has given us these resources on the earth that we can actually use or we can exploit for our benefit, but it has to be according to certain conditions. So as we already mentioned, that we shall not create chaos. So don't make fasad in my, earth. La yuhibbullahu al-mufsidin. So, la fasad fil ard. So do not make fasad in the world. Do not make chaos. And what does it mean? That do not overexploit, the resources. Do not abuse those resources, because we are accountable. What we do in this world, we are answerable, and we will be held responsible, for that on the day of judgment. Now, this concept of stewardship is actually very important for us. And this is where the concept of corporate governance actually lies within Sharia, right? Meaning that we cannot claim that everything that I own is actually mine, because it's not. First thing is, everything I own is actually owned by Allah. It's not, I am not the owner. Allah is the owner, my owner, and everything that I own or belongs to me. The second thing is that all that I have received from Allah as resources, I'm responsible for that, how I'm using those resources, what I'm doing, to generate wealth, from that, how I'm creating wealth by using those resources, and how I'm using that wealth, how I'm distributing that wealth. Meaning that there are people, if I'm above a certain threshold of, of wealth, then there are people who have right in my wealth. This is nothing I can do about it. 2.5% of zakat is not for me, although it is sitting with me, but it's not for me. It is my responsibility to find those people and give them, the 2.5%. If I don't do that, I will be held responsible. This is a very, very important point, because this is where the stakeholders theory comes back into play, that we cannot just think about me, or me and my family, me and my children, me and my parents. No, me and my brothers. No, it's me and everyone else that Allah has made me responsible for. And this is a much bigger, actually stakeholding that we think, in our daily life. So I am responsible for, my family, my immediate family, for my wider family, for my neighborhood, for, my co-workers, for my employer, for my employee, for the society, everything. This is an everyday responsibility that I'm carrying in every sense. And when I get, any form of wealth, whether it's, form of raw material, whether it's form of, land, whether it's form of money, whether it's form of knowledge, I am responsible of using that resources, and I'm responsible for, whatever I'm the output of those resources. So we cannot just, act as the owners of everything, and then khalas, we have, a blank sheet of, do whatever. No, we have to be very, very, careful in our daily attitude and daily behavior, and, the way we conduct our life. So here, what we see is that the good corporate governance, sound corporate governance, the principles of, this corporate governance are largely in line with Sharia. As a company with high standard of corporate governance shall typically comply with the following Sharia requirements, right? For example, don't cause, and any business shall not, be harmful to the mankind or to the animals and the environment. Instead, its actions all shall be beneficial to all of them. Am I right? So any business, any corporation that is Sharia compliant, cannot do all these things. Yani, when I'm saying that I'm a Sharia, based, I'm a Sharia driven, business, a corporation, then I cannot, cause harm to mankind. I cannot cause, things, that I cannot do things. I cannot, take a business or, undertake a business activity that is causing harm to the environment or to people or, to the wildlife. I cannot do that. Instead, I have to make sure that how I'm beneficial to all of them. Also, dealing fairly with the customer. So again, the products are, need to be suitable for the needs of the customers. The staff interactions, with the clients are courteous and efficient. So all this is part of, this is Sharia and good corporate governance, both. Then capital adequacy. Although Sharia is, not making any reference to capital adequacy. There is no capital adequacy ratio mentioned anywhere, in the books of Sharia. But there is actually a very fundamental, requirement that is a cornerstone of, the day-to-day dealings. And that is Sharia requires people or businesses to always fulfill their obligations. So when I have a promise, when I have a liability, when I have an obligation towards someone, whether I'm an individual or I am a business or whatever organization I am required from Sharia point of view to fulfill my obligations. And this is the purpose of capital adequacy as well. So the regulator is asking you to have, certain amount of money sitting in your reserves, because they want to make sure that, God forbid, if there is a need, you can actually fulfill that need. And, for that, you have to maintain a certain, capital adequacy ratio. Then also competing properly with rivals. Then again, when it's shareholders theory, then khalas, then you don't care about anyone. You just, even if you have to kill everyone, to survive, you will do that. But, in stakeholder theory, you cannot. And in Islam, in Sharia, you cannot do that at all. So of course, competition is good. It's good for business, but we have to compete properly with rivals. So any form of hoarding, any form of monopoly, any form of manipulation, cornering the market are not allowed in Sharia. And we cannot do that. This is Sharia requirement, but this is also very much in line with corporate governance requirement, right? And then, the confidentiality of personal information, very, very important. It can be the business customers, the staff, other parties. All that information must be held securely and not open to abuse. This is not, today we are talking about the regulations, data protection, this and that. But the reality is that all of this is actually part of, Sharia requirement for 1400 years. There is nothing new in this for us. A lot of new regulations that are coming, they are actually very much in line, with our, our original lifestyle, I would say, of the Muslims. Then also ensuring that members of staff are treated fairly, and in turn, staff respect the corporation and act professionally in their daily, dealings as well. And then promoting transparency. For example, the customer's ignorance of the market cannot be deliberately exploited or abused. So again, all these things, they are, I'm just taking a few examples here, but this is to show that, the concepts of corporate governance are actually very much rooted in Sharia as well. So a good corporate governance structure will be, it shall be very close, to Sharia. But in Sharia, of course, there are certain, aspects that are additional and that, we have to, fulfill as well. Now, let's go to the corporate governance of Islamic financial institutions. So when it comes, to, Sharia institutions, so what happens is that right now it's actually, sort of the same as we see in conventional. So, whether it's a conventional bank, you will have the sort of same structure where there will be, a board of directors, there will be a management, there will be systems and so on. And there will be, following regulations. But also in Sharia, you will also have all these things, but there will be certain things that will be in addition in order to make, sure of the compliance with Sharia, of the business. Now, Sharia compliance is, again, this is not, just for, for the management or for the customers. This is actually, affecting the interest of all stakeholders. So, for example, very simple thing, a Sharia bank may actually have an opportunity to fund, a certain transaction. So there is a need, I don't know, anything. Let's say, let me give you an example. There is a new development, and a new area is being developed, and in that area, there is a casino being built, right? Now, this is a very good investment. If somebody invests in the money, maybe in 5-10 years time, they will double, triple, quadruple their investment. But anybody who is compliant with Sharia, whether it's an individual investor or whether it's a Sharia compliant, fund, or whether it's a Sharia bank, would they be able, to make use of, that investment opportunity? No, they won't. So as a result, what will happen is that if, for example, a conventional bank is investing money in that, and because there is a casino, there is a bar, there is a, something else, which is not Sharia compliant, they are earning a lot of money. The Sharia following, group of, banks, investors, whatever, they decide actually to stay away from it. Now, as a result, it may happen, arguably, it may happen that actually their rate of return is less. Their return on investment is less because they're not earning as much money. Now, this is something that will affect everyone, right? The government may, collect less taxes from, that institution. The investors may earn less money, and so on and so forth. But this is something that is to be embedded within, the decision, and this is why making the decision wisely and, in accordance with Sharia will be very important. Now, when it comes to the conventional bank may have a very good corporate governance, but they will not have, this element. The halal and haram element will not be there. So for them, it will be just a business. Okay, they are doing business in a responsible way, in a transparent way. There is accountability, there is everything, but there is no Sharia compliance. With Sharia bank, it will become completely different because in addition to everything that convention is doing, the Sharia bank is also looking at whether this transaction is halal or haram, and they will make their decision on the basis of that. If it's haram, they will stay away from it. If it's halal, then they will go for it. And whatever consequences, they will bear the consequences. So they may be earning less money. I give you an example. My son, he's 25 years old now, mashallah. He just finished his master's and in finance from a UK university, and he wanted to become an investment banker, right? Like most of the youth, they want to be investment bankers. It's very flashy and, a lot of money and so on. So I sat him down and I said, son, let me tell you something. Why do you want to become an investment banker? Oh, Baba, because, many of my friends, they are going into investment banking, and there's a lot of money and, it's good life and blah, blah, blah. I said, okay, that's fine, no problem. Who are your friends, your classmates? So any Muslims? He said, no, most of them, they're non-Muslims. I said, look, son, I am not preventing you from going into investment banking, but what I'm telling you is that they will go to conventional investment banking and they will probably make a lot of money. You go to Islamic investment banking. If you want to go to conventional investment banking, I will tell you don't, because this is haram. Now, the only option that you have is actually you go to Islamic investment, banking, which is obviously possible, available. But I'm also warning you that in 5 years' time, when you will meet your friends, the likelihood is that they will be telling you they have made 5 millions, and maybe you will have made, maybe 500,000 or maybe 1 million, right? He might be driving, your friend may be driving a Ferrari, you might be driving, a good BMW, but not a Ferrari. Now, this is something, why? Because Sharia finance will be limited, the opportunities are less, it's a different type of environment, but you will have blessing in your life, you will have peace in your life, you will probably have a much better family life, much barakah in your life. These guys, they will not have that. Now, this is a decision that I want you to make now. You need to understand now that this is the trajectory for you. Now, if you are happy with that, then say Bismillah, no problem, I will support you. But if you want to compare in 5 years' time, in 10 years' time, and then you want to regret that, oh my God, look at that, how successful they are from money point of view, and I'm not that successful, don't have that regret, because this is not, going to work for you. So this is, the type of approach that, we need to build into our thinking, into our mindset. And that is something that is very important. It has effect on everyone and all the decisions that we make in our life. Similarly, as I said, so this is, the Sharia governance will be an additional layer of corporate governance that will be added to, the conventional corporate governance. And this is not a replacement or a substitution. This is actually in addition, more enhancement of that. And those charged with governance, this is the term that has been used actually by IOFI in its governing standards, are collectively responsible. And this will include, those charged with governance will include the board of directors, the Sharia board, the management, and anyone else who is the external auditors, for example. They are collectively responsible for Sharia governance. However, the ultimate responsibility of ensuring Sharia compliance of the financial institutions, products, its transactions, its activities, and its operations actually lies with the board of directors. So they are ultimately responsible. Then they have to make sure that they understand their responsibility. They have a management they have put in place who is capable, competent, understands. They have a system that is appropriate, and they have put all the control functions in place to make sure that Sharia compliance is always, embedded within the business. And the board of directors also shall ensure that the executive management has adequate resources, to establish and maintain a robust Sharia governance framework. This is very important because, just by having, the name is not enough. So you have to put very, well-structured, frameworks in place, and, the arrangements and the systems to make sure that everything is in order. And, additional corporate governance arrangements and requirements or disclosures will be related, to the unique nature of Islamic financial products. For example, the rights of investment account holders. So, as I mentioned already, the depositors who have put money on wakala or on mudaraba, where there is a possibility of loss, which is a loss, profit loss, this does not exist in conventional banking. This is only in Islamic banking, right? Where you have a deposit that actually can return a loss to you. Now, this requires a different type of risk management. This requires a different type of reporting. Now, because these are the special rights that have been allocated to investment account holders. Also in takaful, the Islamic insurance, we also have some inherent limitations as well. For example, the takaful participants, how will they have a voice, in the decisions and so on? What will happen to the, to the takaful surplus, by the end of the annual exercise? So if there is any money left in the pot, how that will be divided, how that will be distributed, and so on. And, there are so many other things as well. So there are additional unique disclosures because of the very nature of Islamic finance. The Sharia finance has different requirements, and these requirements, they require different types of reporting and different types of assessments that will not be applicable to conventional structures in place. Okay, so let's talk about Sharia governance now. I'll try to make it a bit quicker. I think you gave me 45 minutes, which probably I think I have passed almost close to 45 minutes. So inshallah, I'll try. Okay, so the founding principles in Sharia governance, and this is coming directly from IOFI now, IOFI standards. So we need oversight, accountability, and responsibility with regards to Sharia governance. There has to be authority and independence. So whoever is making, which is usually the Sharia board, but it can be also the internal Sharia compliance officer or the Sharia department of the Sharia bank. They need to have the authority and independence, and they need to have the competence as well, right? In order to do things properly, they need to maintain confidentiality. They have to have consistency in their decisions. And what does consistency mean? That, whatever position they have taken, that has to be consistent in all their decisions. So, sometimes we see there are, discrepancies between decisions because, once they have taken, the view that in, today's day and age, I don't know, maybe let's say, cryptocurrencies, they are not halal, right? Cryptocurrency is not halal. But then, a few months later, you see, okay, so the same, Sharia board has actually approved, such and such coin because it's called Islamic coin or Sharia coin or whatever, or because it's Sharia. So, there has to be some consistency. So if a coin is, cryptocurrency, and if cryptocurrency is haram, then, Islamic coin is also haram. Or if there is an Islamic coin, then, we can say that not all cryptocurrencies are haram. So there is a possibility, these conditions, if they are met, then a cryptocurrency can be potentially halal as well, acceptable, permissible from Sharia point of view. And this Islamic coin is actually complying those conditions. So there has to be consistency. We cannot, have decisions that are going, in different directions. Now, the IOFI governance, accounting, auditing, and Sharia standards and ethics, they provide detailed references and guidance to the correct implementation of Sharia governance. IFSB also has, some guidance on governance matters of, financial institutions. So I will encourage you to consult, their websites. They have, their standards accessible online. So it will be, good, inshallah, to, to make sure that your students, especially, they read those standards, or at least they look at them, to familiarize and to know that there is a lot of information, a lot of guidance that has been actually provided to the practitioners. Now, all this Sharia compliance and everything is about understanding and managing one specific risk, which is again unique to Sharia financial institutions. This does not exist in any conventional institution because none of them, they follow Sharia. Because Sharia is an additional element, in the model of a Sharia bank or a Sharia financial institution, then, we have to look at it from a risk point of view as well. So what is the Sharia non-compliance risk? IOFI defines this, this risk as the risk of reductions in earnings or value through financial and or reputational loss resulting from products, services, transactions, operations, activities being Sharia non-compliant. So if a financial institution, and look at the things that they have mentioned. So there is product, there is service, there is transaction, there is operation, and the activities. They may be Sharia non-compliant. If they become Sharia non-compliant, then there is a risk of reduction in the earnings or the reduction of the value of the financial institution, and that will translate, that will materialize in form of either a financial loss or a reputational loss, and usually it's both, right? So if a Sharia bank, for example, has done something, has done a transaction, and that transaction has that product is not Sharia compliant, or then a transaction has been become subject to a controversy from a Sharia point of view, then there may be reputational damage, and we have seen this happening. So this is why the Sharia non-compliance risk needs to be fully understood by everyone, all the way from board of directors to the teller, in the financial institution. They need to know, they need to understand, and they need to manage. Of course, there has to be, what shall we say, a framework in place. So this is not going to happen because the significance of Sharia non-compliance risk in Islamic financial institutions is very high. It's really high. And it has happened so many times when, luckily, I think, as far as I know, that never any incident has happened in Indonesia, which is very good, which is excellent. But in some other markets, we have seen where, things happen and, they caused very serious damage, not only to a financial institution. Sometimes they create systemic issues as well, because one bank, one institution, becomes contagious to others and causes damage to the others. And the biggest thing is that the public loses trust And people say, okay, so, when they say Sharia, I'm not sure what they are doing. I'm not sure whether they are, lying. Are they transparent? Is it really Islamic or not? And this is a very, very common questions. Bapa Kibu, I'm telling you, this is, I travel the world for, work, and I'm telling you, wherever I go, I will always come across people who will ask me, brother, is this really Islamic? Can it be really Islamic? Is it possible to have it Islamic? So, despite having all, this for the last 40, 50 years in Indonesia, I think we have almost 32 years, we have had, Sharia finance. And still a lot of people questioning, is it really, Sharia? Is it, how much can I trust and so on? So, there is this element as well. And the probability of, the Sharia non-compliance risk materializing into a problem is very high. This is really high. And this is, from a risk point of view, you always, draw a matrix by using two axes, which is the probability, how probable it is actually to have a risk materializing. And if it materializes, then what will be the impact? So I gave you an example, somebody, driving, riding a bike, pedaling on the street. What's the probability of risk here? That, he or she may have, God forbid, an accident. How probable it is going to be, actually quite probable. Maybe, he will or she will hit someone walking, maybe a car will hit them, maybe they hit a tree, or a kid, runs in and, gets, into the bike. But what will be the impact of, that accident? Not much, maybe a little bit of injury, but that's it pretty much. Now compare this with a flight, an airplane. What's the probability of, an airplane flying, God forbid, coming down, falling? The probability is very low, right? But the impact is actually very high, because God forbid, if there is an, accident, of an airplane, then most of the time, 100% of the lives will be lost. And it may actually cause a lot of damage on the ground as well. So this is the correlation between probability of a risk and the impact of risk. Now, high probability, low risk, or low impact. This is okay, and we can manage. But when there is, high probability and high impact as well, that is something that is really dangerous. And this is actually what is happening, in Sharia finance. The probability of Sharia non-compliance risk is very high, and the impact is even higher. Now, this means that, God forbid, if there is something wrong, then, the consequences can be very detrimental, for everyone, for the customers, for, the regulator, for, the shareholders, for everyone. So, a lot of people will be suffering because of that. And that's why this risk must be understood properly, and it must be managed with a very, very, good, framework in place. Now, how do we do that? What framework is required, and, how do we manage actually? So first thing is that we have to understand the, the key risk areas. So where are the risk areas? Where does, it happen? So Sharia non-compliance risk, it materializes, but how, where? So there are, a number of areas. For example, the organizational structure and governance of the, the financial institution is actually a root cause. For example, there is not a strong, structure in place. There is probably, no Sharia board, or maybe there is a Sharia board, but that Sharia board actually is not meeting regularly. There is probably no internal Sharia department in the financial institution, or the people working in this, the Sharia department are actually not very well trained. So all this can be actually, very problematic, and it may cause a lot of issues as well. Then the products and services, they can be also problematic. So they can be, there are a number of things that may happen. The products are not Sharia compliant because they're not fulfilling, the need of mudarba, need of ijara, for example, whatever, so the structure and, the services that are provided are not, compliant. Similarly, the product may be Sharia compliant, the documentation, the workflow, everything is there, but the procedure manual is actually not clear. So people, a simple case, and this is a very common case, unfortunately, in Murabaha, one of the requirements is that, if the financial institution is doing a Murabaha financing, the bank actually cannot make the offer to the customer until it has actually taken the possession of, the object of sale, right, of the asset. Now, very common problem because of the lack of, procedure manual, the deficiency in the procedure manual or lack of training. What will happen is that, the bank officers, they will ask the customer, okay, just sign, the approval of sale and the acceptance, for me before now, so that you don't have to come back or you don't have to log again into the app, to accept the transaction. And, I will do everything for you. That murabaha will be actually void from a Sharia point of view. It will not be Sharia compliant. This is, a problem, and that happens because of, lack of training, lack of, procedures, and, so on. Then it may be, due to accounting, because accounting also, it requires certain type of, observations that we need to make. Usually, the banks, they will be required, to report according to IFRS standards. But IOFI has its own standards, which are actually very much in line with IFRS only when there is a difference. So there will be an additional requirement in order to make sure that, the accounting is a true reflection, and especially because I mentioned earlier, this is all about ownership. So who actually owns what? This is something, that is really important, and, that needs to be accounted for correctly. Then, whatever we do, there will be always, some, doubtful, transactions which may require some sort of purification. The most common one is actually, the Sharia scholars, they usually allow up to 5% of Sharia non-compliant income to be tolerated, in terms of investment or in terms of funds, but it's subject to purification. So they need to be purified, and that, whatever percentage up to 5%, which is tolerated, shall be, donated to charity. Whether it was done or not, it was done correctly, calculated correctly, and so on. So this is again, something where, the risk lies for, for Sharia compliance point of view as well. Then in terms of audit and reporting as well, so maybe, the reporting was not done correctly, maybe the audit was not effective, and the internal auditors or the external auditors, they have actually missed something. They have been unable to detect, the issues, and, they have left the gap as it was, and so on. And then finally, in investment and financing transactions as well. So the transactions also, the financing that was made was probably not sound. Maybe, the structure that was used was not fully Sharia compliant. Maybe the structure was Sharia compliant, but the delivery was, not according to, the needs and the requirements of the structure, and so on. So there is always this possibility. So all these areas that you see, they can be a cause of, a problem, of Sharia non-compliance, and this is why we have to have, this very good corporate and Sharia governance framework in place to make sure that we minimize. So we will never be able actually to eliminate it 100%. This is never going to happen. But at least we keep minimizing all the time to make sure that, we reduce this to as much as possible. Now, the framework that I keep referring to is actually called Sharia governance framework. And, this has to be, across the whole organization or the whole institution. So what does it mean? This is actually a comprehensive system that defines a set of appropriate, national and institutional measures, arrangement, requirements, organs, and policies for Sharia financial institutions. The overall objective of Sharia governance framework is establishing an effective and independent oversight of Sharia compliance over, financial institutions' activities to mitigate their exposure to Sharia non-compliance risks. So this is all to help, the Sharia financial institutions to minimize their, risk of Sharia non-compliance, and to, maximizing their, what shall we say, halal profitability and their sustainability. Now, Sharia governance, this is not a substitution or a replacement of, the regulatory requirements. So the regulatory requirements, whether it's capital adequacy, whether it's solvency capital, whether it's, having, whatever requirements are put in place by the regulators like OJK, for example, or, the Ministry of Cooperatives in, for certain BMTs and so on. All this is actually, in place. But Sharia governance, where they will, the framework will actually come on top of that. So this is not So if there is a Sharia compliant financial institution, then it's exempt, from other regulatory requirements. No, the regulatory requirements are still there. Plus, there is also, Sharia requirement. So that is why most of the time, they will have a dual governance model to satisfy both regulatory and Sharia requirements. So what's the importance of this? So Sharia compliance is what we call raison d'être, or why Islamic finance. So when we talk about Sharia finance, then it has to be Sharia compliant. Otherwise, it cannot be called Sharia finance. So therefore, designing and implementing a comprehensive Sharia governance framework is of key importance, so that we can build sustainable Sharia finance institutions. We ensure that, by having a Sharia governance framework, we ensure that Sharia financial institutions are operating in full conformity with Sharia requirements at all times. Then also providing a holistic and systematic approach for managing Sharia non-compliance risk at institutional level and also industry-wide. So this is very important. And in a marketplace like Indonesia, mashallah, the largest Muslim country by population, a G20 economy, with rapidly growing, Sharia finance, market share, mashallah, this is very important that there is a sound system in place that helps, the institutions grow, that helps the industry grow and become bigger, become more profitable, become more, competitive, become more inclusive. It also shall assure the regulators that Sharia financial institutions, they are well protected against any potential losses due to Sharia non-compliant activities, because otherwise they can create systemic risk and their own financial stability and sustainability will be always, undermined. And this is not something, that is actually good or helpful. Then also protecting the interests of the shareholders and depositors of, these Sharia institutions. As Sharia non-compliance may lead to reputational damage, it may, devalue the shareholders, value or their equity, and they may, have losses in the depositors' funds as well. So none of them is actually going to help, the industry or the cause of, Sharia finance. And it also instills public confidence. It gives legitimacy to the practices of Sharia institutions and provides a solid layer of trust to all the stakeholders that the IFIs, the Sharia financial institutions, are following Sharia principles at all time and their business is not at risk. So there are 2 or 3 different models of actually, Sharia compliance or Sharia governance frameworks in the world. So there is no right or wrong here. And why is that? Because each country is different. The constitution will be different. The local laws, regulations may be different. And then there will be also the social fabric, the religious fabric that may differ from one country to the other. There are countries like Indonesia that is primarily, very vast majority is Muslim. There are, countries like Malaysia, for example, which has only 2/3 of its population Muslim, but still dominant. And there are countries where Muslims are in minority. So there is no right or wrong here. So there are, different models that have been adopted, and they can fit in different, nature of legal systems, cultures, and so on and so forth. So what we see is 2 major groups of, the Sharia governance systems in place. So there is the centralized model, which is the presence of a national or a central Sharia body or a board or, something like that, and institutional Sharia board. So which is the case of Indonesia. So, you have DSN MUI, who is serving as the national, or the central Sharia board for everyone. And then there are, Sharia boards of even OJK has its own board, Bank Indonesia has its own board, but each bank or each financial institution will have their own Sharia board as well. Now, everything is actually working in line. So this is one model. This is called centralized model. Then you have a decentralized model where there is no national or central Sharia board. So only institutional Sharia boards, and they are either a requirement or, in some countries, especially in Muslim minority countries, they are not even, a regulatory requirement, but they are encouraged. So here, not everything will be in line because, each Sharia board for the institution will be making their own decisions. They will maybe making, their own policies. So sometimes there can be discrepancies between, different boards and their views and so on and their decisions. However, as I said, that, one size doesn't fit all. So it depends on the country, and it depends on the, the environment that they are in, to assess that which model actually works for them. However, I can tell you, this is what we do, almost on a daily basis, with our clients in IFAS, is that most of the countries are now moving, towards centralized model. So this is, turning out to be the preferred model of most of the countries. I think Indonesia was among the first, if not the first, actually, to have the central Sharia board. And now it has been adopted by a number of other countries as well. In some countries, for example, the UK, where I come from, there is no central Sharia board because the constitution of the country is secular. The regulator says, we are we are conventional, and we are a secular organization. We do not have the mandate actually to interfere with anything to do with religion, any religion. So hence, we will not be able to have any Sharia board of our own. So they have chosen decentralized model where, it's a requirement for, every financial institution. And there are many in the UK, by the way. There are 7 fully fledged Islamic banks operating in the UK, and more than 20 Islamic windows operating in the country. So all of them, they will have their own Sharia boards. But this is it pretty much. So why having Sharia board is important, in the UK, because the regulator says, although we have no say in Sharia, we have, we cannot actually take a position in this. However, we look at it from 2 angles. There is, the risk, the systemic risk. So if an Islamic bank is affected adversely and there is a Sharia non-compliance problem, then it can actually affect our, financial system, and we don't want that. The second thing is consumer protection. So when you say you are an Islamic bank and, you invite people to deposit their money, to take financing, and, to do business with you, then it is your responsibility to make sure that you are Sharia compliant. Now, how do you become Sharia compliant? That we don't know, but we can tell you that just go and get a Sharia board who will be able to tell you, and we will take that Sharia board's view. If they say that you are compliant, then you are compliant for us. So this is the model that they have made, and hence, as I explained, it will differ according to country and, the jurisdiction and so on. So, that will be, very much depending on the, on the country itself and on the jurisdiction. So the key components of the Sharia governance framework will be, the national level and interinstitutional level. So national level, if there is one, then there will be a central Sharia board. Sometimes in, for example, in Indonesia, there is one single, DSN MUI. In Malaysia, they have a central Sharia board model, but it's slightly different because actually it's different in 2 ways. Number one, DSN MUI is completely independent. So this is not related, to Bank Indonesia or OJK or KNKS or anyone else. So this is completely independent. They are, making their own decisions, and, they are not influenced by anything. Whereas in Malaysia, we have, first of all, we have 2 central Sharia boards. So there's a Sharia board of Bank Negara, the central bank, and then we have another central Sharia board, which is for Securities Commission. Now, these 2 regulators, they have their own board and, Sharia board, and each of the board is actually working for the institution, which is slightly, not a lot, but slightly compromises their independence. And, there is a risk of them being influenced. I'm not saying it happens, but, in my view, it's slightly different, from Indonesia. And then, you have other countries as well where, most of them, they will have one Sharia board or sometimes, multiple Sharia boards. Morocco is one country where, there is a central Sharia board, but this central Sharia board is the only Sharia board in the country. And this is the one actually who is providing fatwa to all, products and all financial institutions in the country. No other, no institutional Sharia board is existing here in Morocco, but that's a unique case. Otherwise, most of the countries, they will have institutional or central or both. And then, you will have the institutional level where each institution will have a Sharia supervisory board of their own, with the exception of Morocco, as I told you. All the rest of the world has it at an institutional level, including Indonesia as well. And then you will have internal Sharia departments, which may include Sharia non-compliance risk management, Sharia compliance review and research, the secretariat of the Sharia board, the internal Sharia audit, and then we will have the external Sharia audit. Now, this external Sharia audit is again something which is relatively new to the industry, because before, until I think about 10 years ago, it was the industry was mainly relying on internal audit. Now, gradually, I think this external Sharia audit is becoming mandatory in many countries. Now, for example, in Oman, in Dubai, where I am right now, in Pakistan, and in many other countries, external Sharia audit has actually become compulsory now, mandatory. And this is part of the Sharia governance framework. And if you remember, the initial statements that I made, that all these controls are in place to make sure when there is a national Sharia board, that will provide the guidance, that will provide everything. Then the institutional Sharia board will make the Sharia decision. The internal Sharia board department will actually manage the Sharia non-compliance risk. It will provide the review and research before the transaction or the product takes place. Then internal Sharia audit will actually come post-transaction, when the business has taken place. Then they will check what happened, and then the external Sharia audit will actually be an additional layer of independent opinion as well. So this is all parts of the what we call the Sharia governance framework. So here are some of the definitions of the roles. The Sharia Supervisory Board, it's an independent group of scholars in Islamic law, who have the duty of providing guidance, supervision, and certification of Islamic financial products and operations. Then you have internal Sharia department, who is reporting to the Sharia board and the institution's management to ensure that the directives and the decisions that are made by the Sharia board with any regulatory Sharia requirements are correctly implemented within the business on a day-to-day basis. And then you have the internal and external Sharia audit. This is a comprehensive, periodic, and regular review of the institution's activities and transactions to test whether the business has carried out its business in accordance with the Sharia requirements or not. And then, of course, usually what will happen is that there will be an annual, Sharia compliance report that will be issued by the Sharia board of the financial institution to provide evidence and confidence to the stakeholders of the Sharia financial institution that all business has been conducted in accordance with Sharia requirements, and everything has been actually in order, and people can be satisfied that their deposits are earning them halal return, and their financing is halal and everything, and the investment in the financial institution and any return of that investment is also Sharia compliant. Now, I think this is probably the last thing that I'm mentioning here is the industry Sharia governance model. Now, this is the ideal word, I would say. I'll show you this diagram where IOFI is actually on the top, and what you see here is IOFI is providing the global level industry standards. So this is our role basically in IOFI, where we take the information from the whole industry. We invite the industry stakeholders, the market players, the regulators, the scholars, to give us their opinions on the matters that are actually challenging them. And then we provide solutions to those in accordance with Sharia, and try to provide guidance step by step. And there are a number of standards in Sharia, in accounting and governance, all issued. In governance, we have internal Sharia audit standard, we have external Sharia audit standard, we have sukuk standard, we have many other standards, how to do these things, and so on and so forth. And then we are also producing guidebooks which are very, very detailed, providing templates and so on and so forth. So this is the role that IOFI is playing. Then at the second level, under IOFI, is this national level, central Sharia board. What you see here on the screen, CSB 1, CSB 2, and 3. This is actually Central Sharia Board 1, Central Sharia Board 2 or 3. It can be in different countries, it can be in different sectors, for like Malaysia. And this is to provide national level guidance, oversight, and also arbitration, because many times what happens is that there may be a dispute between two Sharia finance institutions, over a certain transaction. There might be arguments about, a product that is controversial, or there may be a dispute between a customer and a financial institution, where the Central Sharia Board in some jurisdictions has actually been given the right and the authority to provide arbitration and to resolve that matter, pertaining to Sharia compliance. And then under, each Central Sharia Board, there are, this SSB is Sharia Supervisory Board 1, 2, 3, as you see, and these are the institutional Sharia boards. And at the institutional level, they will provide, the fatwa or the Sharia approval for the product itself, and they will provide the supervision and advice to their respective, Sharia institution to make sure that the risk is managed and the business is performing in inshallah in a very good way. Why this is important? Because we believe that sound governance means there will be a stronger industry, there will be sustainable growth, and also we will be achieving the objectives of Sharia. Achieving the Maqasid al-Sharia is very, very important, and this is one of the prerequisites, I would say, that we need to factor into anything that we do when we come to Sharia finance, that how the financial institution, the financial sector, and the relevant regulations and standards and everything is actually helping the financial institutions, their stakeholders, and the society at large, and the Muslim Ummah, to be achieving the Maqasid al-Sharia or the objectives of Sharia, and how we can be independent, sustainable, a society that actually lives in accordance with the the realms of Sharia, of the teachings of Quran and Hadith. We fulfill our religious obligations, we fulfill our worldly obligations, but in the best possible way, inshallah. So this is the overall intention here, and this is what we are trying to achieve in different ways and forms, whether it's bringing the standards, whether it's doing adequate regulations, whether it's providing institutional structures to make sure that everything is in place. So I think I will probably stop here. It's I think enough for today. So I don't want to overwhelm. There are, I think, a few more slides as well, but it's okay. I think we can stop here. Let's leave some time for what we say, question and answer as well. So thank you, and over to you, Pa Jajan or Pa Adril.
Okay. Let's have Q&A sessions, I think. But because Dr. Sethi has reminds me that we have time up to 9:30 in this evening, so
Almost
maybe
finished.
Maybe I just read the questions that have been posted in advance in the chat. There are 3 participants that has posted their questions. The first one is from Abdullah Sayyid. He was asking questions about what safeguards should be established within Sharia compliant organizations to detect or prevent management deliberate effort to circumvent the Sharia standards, maybe in order to get short-term profit.
Thank you, Padre. Yeah, I think it's very simple. It's the policies. It's the policy, and I think training, capacity building as well. So this is very important, and as I mentioned, this is very much to do with integrity. So the key element here, which I believe will play a role, is actually what we call khashiyatullah, or the fear of Allah. If the management is actually aware of this concern, if they have this concern of Allah's fear, And of course, there are regulatory implications as well. Then I think, inshallah, we can hope that if they are capacitated in terms of the required knowledge, the required skills, they understand Sharia, they understand the risk involved with Sharia, then we can imagine, inshallah, that they will not be engaging into any moral hazard or causing any fraud, etc. But if there is a lack of integrity, if there is a lack of awareness of Sharia, if there is typically lack of fear of Allah, then unfortunately there is nothing that anyone can do about it. This is very much human. And as I said earlier, that in terms of governance, humans will always remain there. No technology will be able to help them.
What do you think about the Sharia supervisory board? For example, in Indonesia, actually inside the Sharia compliance organizations, they are under the payroll of the corporation. So how can they have a strong influence on for the Sharia compliance of the management? Because
Yes.
managements make the budget for their salary.
Absolutely, absolutely. Let me also tell you, Adril, that in 2014-15,
yeah,
I actually led the project for Bapenas when we prepared the national master plan for Sharia finance for the government of Indonesia. So this was the architecture finance Sharia Islamic or something like this. AXI was called AXI. So we prepared that, and one of those things was actually human capital. How do we create this quality of people actually who have the integrity, who have the passion for Islamic finance, and who have the right skills as well. So there was actually a whole section, in the master plan that was dedicated to human capital, and one of those things was actually about increasing this integrity and increasing this awareness and creating, this sort of, management environment, in the financial Sharia institutions to make sure that they do the right things. So some of those recommendations in the master plan, I was recently in Indonesia, and I learned that they have been implemented and they have borne some fruit, alhamdulillah. But there are others that I think are still to be implemented, and we can just hope and pray, inshallah, that things get better with time. And we all have to play a role in this. This is not one man's job. This is a much bigger than any one person. So, and any one organization as well. So I think, leaving everything to DS and MUI will be also unrealistic. We really need to have different channels. So of course they have a role to play, but then maybe other, structures, other bodies, for example, Sharia Finance Professional Association, or something like this, or financial sector, associations, they may actually play a role in this as well. But this is a work in progress that will continue forever. This is never going to stop.
Okay, now
So
the last one.
Okay.
How can corporations operating within a pure capitalistic framework, such as Apple and the others, yeah, especially with those significant market influence in the world, be encouraged to adopt implemented GCG principles that values focus on society and nature. That all what is called is the usually called is externalities, the
Yeah.
cost that they don't price in their price tags. How they can pay for that?
Okay, this is a very interesting question. I really appreciate, whoever has asked this, Paria.
Ariana.
Yeah, Paria. Yeah, thank you, Paria, for raising this important and interesting question. In my view, and I'm going to be realistic here, I think our expectation that we will be able to convince Apple or the likes of them, to adopt and implement good corporate governance principle and values. I don't think that this will happen in our lifetime. We have tried a lot, and I'm not saying that we shouldn't. However, making our attempt to do this is a different thing, and expecting a result from that is a completely different thing. So we need to continue doing this. and we need to voice our demand, from these, extremely big organizations who have a lot of influence in the world in different ways and forms. However, we also need to be realistic in our expectation that this is probably not their cup of tea, this is not their interest, and this actually goes against their own philosophy. In the business that I told you already, this is very capitalist, this is very shareholders driven, and they don't care about stakeholders, etc. Even when they talk about corporate social responsibility and all that, this is just talk. They don't walk their talk, unfortunately. My personal view on this is that instead of wasting our energy, our resources, our time, and living a life in despair that these people are not listening to us and these people are, doing the wrong things and, so on and so forth. My view is that we shall abandon them completely, and we need to focus on creating our own brands, our own institutions, our own, corporations who shall be big enough actually to do what these are doing, but in a Sharia compliant way. This is the only way that I see actually. But unfortunately, I have a lot of these discussions, with different people, and I'm having a big difficulty in convincing people because what I'm saying is actually very difficult. This is something, making noise about Apple. Hey, Apple, we want you to do this. Hey, Meta, we want you to do this. But this is easy part. Anyone can do that. I will just take 2 minutes. I can post something now on LinkedIn, on, any social media. Hey, Apple, do this. But, will Apple listen to me? No, they won't. Will it make a difference? Probably not. Many people doing, maybe a little bit, but not much, right? Instead, if I put my energy, my time, my resources in creating something which is, not probably equivalent to Apple, but close, and that is founded on Islamic principles, and that is, actually, not only doing those the right things because the public is asking, because they shall be doing that. That is the right thing. That is their value. The brand, the company, the business, the corporation is actually founded on those values and principles. That will be a completely different ballgame. However, this is a very long route that I'm saying. This is if we start today, it's probably going to take many decades. I will definitely not live, for that long that I will be able to see the fruit. But at least, we have the idea, we have the thought, we have to start, we have to sow the seed. If I can't eat the fruit, that's fine. My, next generation, 5 generations down the line, 10 generations down the line, somebody will be able to eat the fruit. I think this is the way for us to go. I do not want to waste my time and energy in, convincing these corporations, to follow the, to create the values or to believe in the values or implement those values that they actually do not, believe at all. They are completely opposite, and it will be, I think, just waste of everyone's time. This is my view.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. for
Thank
your
you.
insight.
Thank you very much. Jazakallah khair, Brother Farouk. Dr. Skefi, how about that? We call it a day.
Enough.
Oh, okay. Still more questions?
No.
Hmm?
We finish our lecture.
Okay, we call it a day then. Yeah. Okay. Jazakallah khair, Brother Farouk. We have to end this session because it's quite late in the night. Actually. Okay. I will hand it over to Jajang.
Okay,
Go ahead.
okay, Mr. Adil, thank you so much to our speaker, Mr. Muhammad Baruch Raza, and also Mr. Adil Hakim for the discussions. And also thank you so much for the participants that contribute in the discussions, in Q&A sessions. We get a lot of questions in column chat, but since of the limited time, we might just accept a very limited number of questions. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, as we come to the end of tonight international lecture, we would like to express our sincere gratitude to our speaker and all participants for making this event a success. We hope that the knowledge shared tonight will contribute to the development of stronger and more Sharia compliant governance frameworks within Islamic financial institutions. Thank you once again for your attendance. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Waalaikumsalam, Pak Jajang, Pak Adril, Pak Sepki.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Yeah, thank you. Terima kasih. Inshallah. Yeah, thank you everyone.
Thank you,
Assalamualaikum.
Mr. Farouk Raza.
Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam.
Waalaikumsalam.
Wabarakatuh.
Turn back time, rewind if I could. Pick it undone, swear that I would make it up to you. Mom, I'm grown up now, it's a brand new day. I'd like to put a smile on your face every day. Mom, I'm grown up now, and it's not too late. I'd like to put a smile on your face every day. You know you are the number one for me. You know you are the number one for